Hello and welcome to my tiny tarot practice. I'm Amelia Ruby, and this podcast shares my tiny tarot practice, where I'm exploring the tarot card by card, starting with the minor arcana. Today's card is the Seven of Pentacles. This card features a person standing, their hands resting and their body weight kind of leaning onto what appears to be a hoe, some type of gardening tool. And they're looking down at this kind of bush, trailing vines, this like very lush, green, verdant, cultivated garden. And the garden is growing the pentacles, the coins, the 7 coins of this card. Now, many interpretations of this card emphasize that it's a card about hard work and waiting for harvest. You've put in the work. Now is the time for patience. Now is the time before you can reap what you sow. I think that's a perfectly apt description of it. When I look at this card, I'm like, yep, you did the work and now you're just hanging out looking at it. But I think there's also something to the sort of, there's like a downturn to this person's face. They almost look like they're frowning. And it makes me wonder if they might perhaps be questioning what all of that hard work was for, what all of their work has been for. And of course, I'm sure I'm projecting that onto this card, but isn't that exactly what we do when we interpret tarot so often in readings for ourselves or even for others? I think that in my experience, so often after I've put a lot of work into a project, I definitely get to a point where maybe that work hasn't quote unquote paid off yet, or I don't totally know what it was for. And sometimes you move through that moment and it totally pays off and you're so glad you did it. And other times that feeling kind of never goes away. You're never really past it because maybe you just did a lot of hard work and it didn't actually reap any benefits, right? Sometimes we plant a lot of seeds in our garden. Sometimes those seeds even make all of these leaves, and yet there isn't much of a harvest. I had that experience planting squash this summer. Planted a bunch of squash seeds. They got green. The vines were everywhere, but the plant didn't fruit. We weren't able to harvest. I think I got one squash, a small baby one. So I think the 7 of Pentacles is that moment when you've done the work, but you don't know what's going to come next. And that can be a time of anxiety or even sadness. And for me, that then becomes an invitation to both, recognize that feeling, and as we step into other cards in the Pentacles, look for ways to celebrate the work that has been done, even if perhaps the reward has not arrived. Thank you so much for tuning in to my tiny tarot practice, this podcast where I explore the tarot card by card. As always, if you would like to see any of the books or decks that I reference, you can find them in my bookshop page that I've curated just for you. That is linked in the show notes. If you make a purchase through that page, I will receive a small affiliate payout that helps me keep this podcast going. I find that I am at a little bit of my own 7 of Pentacles moment with this podcast lately. So if you've enjoyed listening to this episode or any others, I would truly appreciate if you could rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. It always means a lot to see that the show or the episodes mean something to people and that you're tuned in and enjoying this labor of love. Again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with more episodes of my tiny tarot practice.